This is an NBC News special report. Crisis in Moscow.
Журналистов отвечали исполняющий обязанности президента СССР Геннадий Янович.
It says that Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev is no longer exercising his duties.
August 19th, 1991. The day the Earth stood still just for another moment. The period in time when Gennady Yanayev and his Gang of Eight briefly took power in an attempt to preserve the Soviet Union for just a little bit longer. This is the Soviet Coup, and we're going to be talking about it today. Welcome back to the August Coup of 1991, 30 years later, where today I will be speaking of the first day of the coup, August 19th, 1991.
Служить народам нашей страны, строго следовать.
Let's talk about it, shall we? So to recap from the previous video, which if you have not seen, I will leave a link in the description below. But if you choose not to see it, I will give a brief overview of the previous video. From the years of 1985 to 1991, Gorbachev had made hardline members of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union more and more irritated of him as he relaxed economic and political restrictions that were made in the USSR prior to Gorbachev's tenure as General Secretary. The final straw came when the Baltic republics of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania had seceded from the USSR in 1990 to become their own respective, independent, democratic countries, and as such, placed Gorbachev on house arrest to declare a coup d'etat in a desperate attempt to preserve and restore the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, despite Gorbachev trying to do that as well in a different reformist manner. So now that we are caught up, let us begin.
Good morning. Mikhail Gorbachev has been ousted from power in the Soviet Union. In what appears to have been a bloodless coup, hardliners have seized power and declared a state of emergency.
August 19th, 1991 was the first day of Gennady Yanayev's true day as provisional head of the GKCHP government and acting president of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. His government was backed by hardline elements of the government, including but not limited to the military, police, hardline Communist Party members, and KGB security forces. The GKCHP tried to give themselves the appearance of being the true government of the USSR by broadcasting their message on the radio in an attempt to legitimize themselves. These radio messages started at approximately 7 a.m., starting the coup officially. The KGB also created an arrest list for various dissidents they saw as HVTs, or high-valued targets, including Russian SFSR President Boris Yeltsin and his allies, the Russian SFSR-controlled Radio России and Televidение России plus Echo Moskvy, the only independent radio stations, were cut off the air. However, the station later resumed transmitting and became a source of information during the coup, and the BBC World Service and Voice of America were also able to provide continuous coverage of the coup. Gorbachev and his family heard the news from a BBC bulletin on a small Sony transistor radio that had not been taken away from him. For the next several days, he refused to take food from outside his dasha to avoid being poisoned, and took long outdoor strolls to dispute reports of his ill health. Armor units of the Tamanskaya Division and the Kantermirovskaya Tank Division rolled into Moscow along with paratroops. Around 4,000 soldiers, 350 tanks, 300 armored personnel carriers, and 420 trucks were mobilized to Moscow. 4 Russian SFSR People's Deputies, who were considered the most dangerous by the hardline authorities, were detained by the KGB at an army base near Moscow. However, almost no arrests were made by the KGB during the coup. In order to legitimize the coup, Yanayev ordered Foreign Minister Alexander Besmertnik to make a statement requesting formal diplomatic recognition from foreign governments and the United Nations.
При осуществлении полномочий президента Российской Советской Федеративной Социалистической Республики.
During the takeover, the GKCHP considered arresting Yeltsin on his return from the Kazakh SSR to Moscow. But this plan had failed when Yeltsin changed flight routes to Chekhovsky Air Base to Moscow Vnukovo Airport. After that, they considered arresting him when he was at his dasha near Moscow. The KGB Alpha Spetsnaz group surrounded Yeltsin's dasha, but for an undisclosed reason did not apprehend him. The failure to apprehend and detain Yeltsin would prove fatal against Yanayev and the committee's plans. After the announcement of the coup at 7 a.m., Yeltsin began inviting prominent Russian officials to his dasha, including Leningrad Mayor Anatoly Sobchak, Moscow Deputy Mayor Yuri Luzhkov, Colonel General Konstantin Kubets, RSFSR Prime Minister Ivan Silyev, Vice President Alexander Rutskoy, and RSFSR Supreme Soviet Chairman Ruslan Khasbulatov. Yeltsin initially wanted to remain at the dasha and organize a rival government, but Kubets advised them to travel to the White House, Russia's parliament building, in order to maintain communications with opponents of the coup. They arrived and occupied the White House at 9 a.m. Together with Silyev and Khasbulatov, Yeltsin issued a declaration to the citizens of Russia that condemned the GKCHP's actions as a reactionary, anti-constitutional coup. The military was also not urged to take part in the coup, and local authorities were asked to follow laws from the RSFSR president rather than the GKCHP. Yeltsin also took commands of all Soviet military and security forces in the RSFSR. The declaration called for a general strike with the demand to let Gorbachev address the people. This declaration was distributed around Moscow in the form of flyers and was disseminated nationwide through medium-wave radio and on Usenet news groups via the Relcom computer network. Workers at Izvestia threatened to go on strike unless Yeltsin's proclamation was printed in the newspaper. At 10 a.m., Rutskoy, Silyev, and Khasbulatov delivered a letter to Soviet Supreme Chairman Anatoly Lukyanov demanding a medical exam of Gorbachev by the World Health Organization, WHO, and a meeting between themselves, Yeltsin, Gorbachev, and Yanayev within 24 hours. Rutskoy also visited Patriarch Alexei II of Moscow, the spiritual leader of the Russian Orthodox Church, and convinced him to declare support for Yeltsin. Meanwhile, in Leningrad, Military District Commander Viktor Samsonov ordered the formation of an emergency committee for the city, chaired by Leningrad First Secretary Boris Gidisbov, in order to circumvent Sobchak's democratically elected municipal government. Samsonov's troops were ultimately blocked by hundreds of thousands of demonstrators supported by the police, which forced Leningrad television to broadcast a statement by Sobchak. Workers at the Kirov plant went on strike in support of Yeltsin. Moscow First Secretary Yuri Prokofiev attempted to do the same, but was rebuffed when Boris Nikolsky refused to accept the office of mayor of Moscow. At 11 a.m., RSFSR Foreign Minister Andrei Kozyrev held a press conference for foreign journalists and diplomats and gained the support of most of the West for Yeltsin. In the afternoon, the citizens of Moscow began to gather around the White House and to erect barricades around it. In response, Gennady Yanayev declared the state of emergency in Moscow at 1600 hours. Yanayev declared the press conference at 1700 hours that Gorbachev was resting. He said, "Over these years, he has gotten very tired and needs some time to get his health back." Yanayev's shaking hands led some people to think he was drunk, and his trembling voice and weak posture made his words unconvincing. After viewing the conference, Gorbachev expressed confidence that Yeltsin would be able to stop the coup. That night, his family smuggled out a videotape of Gorbachev condemning the coup. Yanayev and the rest of the State Committee ordered the Cabinet of Ministers to alter the then-current 5-year plan to relieve the housing shortage. All city dwellers were given 1/3 of an acre each to combat winter shortages by growing fruit and vegetables. In connection with the illness of Valentin Pavlov, the duties of the head of government of the USSR were entrusted to First Deputy Prime Minister Vitaly Dozhguzhiev. Meanwhile, Major Evdokimov, Chief of Staff of the Tank Battalion of the Tamanskaya Division guarding the White House, declared his loyalty to the leadership of the Russian SFSR. Yeltsin climbed one of the tanks and addressed the crowd. Unexpectedly, this episode was included in the state media's evening news.